For those of you that have been involved with Equality Florida over the last 10 years and have heard me speak probably too many times, you've heard me say for so long that in all of these meetings, I was the only transgender person in the house. That has changed. And it's changed because of you. It's changed because of society. It's changed because of what Equality Florida has done. And it's changed because people are willing to open their hearts and minds so that we all can simply be our true and authentic selves. And that's where we have the commonality in this room. So please, once again, give a warm hand to all my friends from the Transgender Community. This means so much to me because it shows how far we've come in providing a safe and inclusive environment where transgender people feel welcome to come out and be in this environment and feel welcome and inclusive and part of what's going on in our community. And you know, nothing is more important than the transgender community as we go forward. Because what we've seen in the past, as you probably know, is there's been a great deal of legislation that we've tried to pass in the past. And that legislation, including INDA in Washington, has always run into the snag in that gender identity and expression was not understood. And so they could get the sexual orientation part, but everybody would like, I just don't get this gender identity and expression piece. Yet there was no one in the transgender community willing to step out and be that voice until the last couple of years. We've had the Laverne Cox on the cover of Time magazine. You know, Caitlyn Jenner. But Caitlyn's portfolio and message actually made the world stop and discuss what it meant to be transgender. You know, the day after her portfolio kind of aired, I was going through the airport flying to DC, and I must have passed 6 different families that were talking about that. And all of the discussions were positive. And when I went and sat in the terminal waiting for my plane, there was a family behind me, 2 kids, and the little boy says, "So mommy, that man is now a woman?" And she said, yes, she is. And the little girl said, "Well, she looks very pretty and she looks very happy." And yeah. You know what's really interesting about that is at that moment, I wanted to say, I'm trans too. I heard from a lot of people who said, I never felt more proud of being transgender than that moment. To be validated, if you will, on a national and international stage. So Equality Florida, you know, I'm so happy that we launched our Transgender Initiative last year, to where we formed a transgender advisory board covering from Pensacola to Miami, made up of advisory board members from the transgender community, to where we now have this network of advocacy, education, and public policy, to where we can fight against stuff in Tallahassee, which is absolutely off the charts and hateful, or we can advocate for certain initiatives that are going on in, you know, Miami or in Tallahassee, etc. There's a lot of work still to be done. You know, the transgender community has come a long way. We represent a key piece, a linchpin in future legislation, in the fact that, as Michael said, when human rights ordinances come up, and when the Competitive Workforce Act, once again, we try to get out of committee to get on the floor and get voted. Gender identity and expression is always something that we have to educate and we have to advocate. You know, it's our mantra is being visible and being vicious in getting the message across. And being vigilant while we're vocal in the fact that it's all about telling the story. You know, for the most part, people don't understand what gender identity and expression means. And unless there's brave people like my friends here on stage that step up, tell their stories, educate other people, even one person at a time, this legislation will not go forward. And we have the challenges ahead of us. As you might have read recently, in our own backyard in Tampa, a transgender woman was murdered. Again, the 10th person to be murdered in the state of Florida this year, or in the nation this year. We continue to see this pattern of violence where transgender people, in trying to be visible and be out, are encountering this violence and this circle of fear that prevents us from moving forward. Her name was Clarke, and there were several things wrong with that that speaks to the fact that there's still a lot of education that needs to be done. Number one, you know, the police department, Hillsborough County Police Sheriff's Department apparently misgendered her in reference to saying that they first thought it was a woman and then they found out it was a man in a dress. Then they referred to India as he, and then they posted the picture that ended up in the media was a picture of her former mugshot of an arrest that happened that she was acquitted of. In that whole scenario, it speaks to the education that we need to still do. Number one, the police department didn't get it right. That's not the way you convey this. This truly was a transgender woman who had been murdered and deserves respect and dignity and death. And then secondly, the media followed the police and posted those very words, disrespecting her from the grave. So again, it speaks to, you know, the education that we need to do. We're seeing that businesses are getting it. Major employers more and more are wanting to get it right in reference to inclusion and policies and insurance and all that kind of good stuff that we need as we move forward. But we're seeing that in the medical community, in education, in the police department, education, awareness is needed as we move forward. And then lastly, and most importantly, we can't take our eyes off the fact that there's still work to be done to get protections passed for all of us. And you know what we sometimes lose is that we all share the same goal, simply to be our authentic selves. We all share that. You know, I was at, and you might have heard me tell this story before, but I was at the day of celebration when marriage came to Florida, came to the United States. And someone came up to me and said, well, Gina, what are you doing here? This isn't your fight. And you know, I thought for a moment, and I thought, even within our own community, there's education to be done. And I got up, and when I spoke that evening, I told the story of a good friend of mine. And this kind of tells it all. It kind of hopefully educates in that she was married for 25 years. And part of their marriage foundation was they had this amazing destination wedding in Hawaii. And it kind of made us sick. Every time they got together, you know, they talk about their Hawaiian wedding and all that. It was just so fabulous. We went on a helicopter ride and all this stuff. But it was a foundational piece. If you're in a relationship, there's always those pieces that bind you together. And this was one of those. Well, when she transitioned, they were then a same-sex couple. And their marriage was no longer valid in the state of Florida. And it pulled, and she would call and she said, this is just pulling us apart in the fact that that part of who we are is no longer there. But when marriage came to the United States and marriage came to Florida, she called me and she said, once again, we have that foundation. And she said, we sat on the sofa and we just held each other for hours. you know, folks, that's what it's all about. That's why we do the work. It's not about raising money. It's not about passing laws. It's about social change so that everyone can simply be their true and authentic selves, whatever and whoever that may be. So I'll leave you with this, and once again, thank you for coming out. I know that we're living in Seattle now, so we're I don't know whether it's Sunshine State my blood, right? But truly, you know, the transgender community, and I'm so proud of these ladies. I wish, you know, we tried to get some transgender men to come out, but we were unable to. But these are members of the T Network, which is organized by Jennifer, who's right here with Lockheed Martin. This group of ladies come from all walks of life, but what they have in common is just that. They want to be their true and authentic selves and have a place to live and be. And you know, in the words of Jazz Jennings, she said, we simply want the world to see us as we see ourselves. Very simple. And I kind of take that to the next level, and with Equality Florida, I say, you know what? We demand that the world see us as we see ourselves. We're tired of being in the shadows, and we're tired of being the silent T, and that will no longer happen. So thank you.